Hi there. My name's Ashley Ruth. I come from the U.S. Army CERDEC, which is the Communication, Electronics, Research, Development, and Engineering Center. And I want to talk to you today about how we can lighten the load. I wanted to start with a load that you guys are probably familiar with, having been through high school. It's been in the interest of several people to learn about the burden of weight on the human form, particularly in adolescence. So in California in 2004, they actually studied the entire curriculum and averaged the amount of weight that the 4 core textbooks weighed. And the results were that the combined average weight of the 4 core textbooks ranged from 16 pounds to over 20 pounds from 9th to 12th grade, which is high school. So the 4 core classes are science, English, history, and mathematics. I have them represented here in my 4 textbooks, in my book bag. This book bag is actually 18.5 pounds, so right in that range. And since we all went through high school, we remember how pretty heavy this was. We had to lug this back and forth to school every single day in between classes. It's quite a heavy load. But the soldier, he or she has to carry anywhere from 60 to 160 pounds, depending upon her role or his role on the battlefield. At least 3 to 8 times heavier than what I have on my back right now. Up to 20 pounds of this, though, is batteries, about what I have on my back right now. This is because the soldier needs to carry with him all the energy that he or she needs to power all the electronics that he has on him. You can see he's got the night vision here, he has a radio, GPS, an end user device. You and I get to plug into an outlet on a wall, but there are no outlets on the battlefield. So they must carry everything on them, along with food, ammunition, etc. So my big question is, how can we lighten the load for him, our soldiers? Through the development of advanced battery systems. Well, I'll get to that later. This starts with an analysis of different battery components and looking at those components' materials. One of the electrodes in a lithium-ion battery, the cathode, requires lithium to intercalate in and out of a crystal structure. If we want to have a high energy system, we need to have a lot of lithium going in and out. So the quantity is the capacity or amount of energy. But the faster that this lithium can go in and out of the cathode, the greater the power that this system has. Myself and my colleagues study these phenomena, and as a material scientist, I can invent or develop new materials that can increase the energy or power of these battery systems. Now, if we're successful in developing, say, a high energy system, that means that the soldier's battery now can run for longer. That means they can leave a couple batteries behind, lightening the load that they have to carry. Additionally, we're trying to come up with materials that are lighter, not only has higher energy, but can hold, but way less. Again, further reducing the burden on the soldier. But there's a burden of risk that we need to mitigate as well. It's not just the physical load. You see, by increasing the amount of energy in this small footprint, it can be quite dangerous. To put it into perspective, nitroglycerin, or dynamite, has a specific energy of 1,400 watt-hours per kilogram. The batteries that we're putting on our soldiers right here that we're developing have about the same energy as a quarter stick of dynamite, 350 watt-hours per kilogram, or even more. As you can imagine, it's essential that we keep the soldier safe. One way that we can do this is through the development of safer materials. An example of this would be the development of solid-state electrolytes. Traditional lithium-ion batteries utilize a flammable liquid electrolyte. And you can see many YouTube videos of lithium batteries igniting into flame. This is because of that flammable electrolyte. But if we can develop a solid electrolyte, now an electrolyte needs to be able to pass ions readily through it. So if we can develop a solid that can move these ions just as fast as we can in a liquid, then we can put energy on the soldier in a safe way. Now, something we have to consider that many other people, or the commercial sector rather, don't have to consider, is the potential for projectile interaction. Our soldiers are getting shot at. Our soldiers also need to have batteries that work long after they've been developed on the factory floor. They have to be shipped overseas, get to theater, and get into the soldier's hands, and it has to work just as reliably then as it did when it was made. So these batteries need to have an extended shelf life as well. Additionally, our soldiers are all over the planet. So they have to work in many different climates. So a battery that works in the desert also has to work just the same as up in the mountains. If we are successful in achieving these characteristics, we can help alleviate some of the mental load on the soldier, knowing that he or she has the energy that they need to accomplish their mission. The mental load is already pretty great, knowing that they or any of their comrades may have to lay down their life. A disturbing statistic that I learned shortly after joining the civilian army is that in a survey done by Deloitte between 2005 and 2009 in the war in Afghanistan, 38% of all US casualties were a direct result of improvised explosive devices attacking convoys. These convoys are primarily carrying fuel and some other supplies. So our soldiers are dying because of our need for energy resupply. So if we can more effectively utilize that energy, we can help keep our soldiers out of harm's way. So as I mentioned, or implied rather, the stakes are pretty high, and the need is great for energy technology, which is why I wanted to work for the Department of Defense. Fortunately, there are a couple opportunities out there that allowed me to get to this position. I want to talk a little bit about the scholarship that actually got me here. SMART Scholarship is Science, Mathematics, and Research for Transformation. I applied to this when I was studying fuel cells in graduate school. Provides tuition, and you get to work for the Department of Defense, which is the key feature here, is it's recruiting STEM talent into the Department of Defense. You also get to spend internships while you're in school, working in that DoD lab before you finish. And actually, there's a number of us here actually that are SMART scholars, so you guys know what I'm talking about. I was fortunate enough to be awarded this scholarship. And I'm about to give them a bit of free advertising. I wanted to explain why. Ralph this morning was talking about how important it was that we nurture, recruit, and retain STEM talent in the Department of Defense. And you sitting here are my colleagues working in the Department of Defense. I'd like to think that you would be interested in recruiting people like me and these other very intelligent SMART scholars here sitting in the audience. Additionally, anyone watching who may be a student may not even know about this program, so I wanted to give it a little bit of information about it. So, as I described, as the point of my talk is, I want to talk about how we can lighten the load for the soldier. One of the reasons why I think it's important that we lighten the load for students is because we want to attract this STEM talent. And we need to make sure that people want to come and work for the Department of Defense. And this is important because having STEM talent in the Department of Defense ensures our nation's security. Our adversaries are very intelligent, and they're actively working, as Ms. Miller described this morning, to try to find our weaknesses. And we need the brightest minds coming up with the best technologies to make sure we achieve and maintain overmatch across all domains. And the way we can do this is through programs like the scholarship in order to alleviate the load for the students. All of us went through school. We have a lot of burdens that we have to carry while we're in school. First, it's the degree itself. Well, universities don't hand out degrees, so that's still your responsibility. But the SMART Scholarship helps alleviate the worry. You don't have to worry about student loans, because your tuition is paid for. You also don't have to worry about financial insecurity. It's because they provide you a stipend, they provide you with internship support payments, they also provide an allowance for books and health insurance. This is actually really important for those of you that have families and want to go back to school, because that means you can help support your family while you're getting an education and trying to work for the Department of Defense. And finally, you don't have to worry about unemployment because there's a job waiting for you at the end. It's actually really important. I thought that getting my big fancy degree meant that it would be really easy to find a job. Who wouldn't want someone who's so highly educated? But a lot of my colleagues, very bright colleagues, struggled to find a job after graduation. To give you some real numbers, this is a NSF survey of earned doctorates in engineering. I just highlighted 2012, who was the closest one to today. And only 63% of students that were graduating in 2012 knew that they had a job or postdoc lined up when they were graduating. 12% of those, they were still negotiating, and 21% of them were unsure what their future looked like because they hadn't lined anything up yet. That means 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 students that are graduating still don't know what their future looks like. But with the SMART scholarship, you're able to have a job waiting for you. I'd like to think I represent a success story for this scholarship. I was able to jump right into working into the battery team. I'd spent 3 summers working there while I was working on my PhD. And I got started right away. I came up with an idea shortly after starting, probably because my load was alleviated. I was able to add a catalyst to a cathode material that increased the power, basically the kinetics rather, of the charge transfer. And I was able to get a patent disclosure written within the first year of my employment. So return on investment is if you hire students like me and the other scholars here, you hopefully get to have work done right away because we can really hit the ground running. So I now work for the greatest military force on the planet, and now I can work to lighten the load for the soldiers, just like the Department of Defense and the SMART Scholarship did for me. And that's a load that I can handle. That's it.